Thunder split the Carolina sky as 9-year-old Emma Whitfield pressed herself against the rough bark of an ancient oak tree, her small hands covering her ears against the screams that would haunt her forever. The year was 1838, and in the span of 20 minutes, everything she had ever known disappeared in a storm of violence at Thunder Ridge Pass. Through the rain and gunsmoke, she watched helplessly as masked riders tore through their small wagon convoy, leaving devastation in their wake. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma never should have wandered from the wagons that April morning. The convoy of 12 families had been traveling from Virginia to establish a new settlement near Pine Creek, carrying everything they owned, plus precious medical supplies that Emma's father, Dr. Samuel Whitfield, had carefully packed for their new community. But the delicate purple trillium flowers growing beside the trail had caught her eye, and she'd slipped away to gather some for her mother's birthday the next day. The first gunshot sent birds exploding from the trees. Emma dropped her handful of flowers and ran toward the nearest hiding place, a massive oak whose lightning-split trunk created a natural hollow. From there, she witnessed the nightmare unfold. Raiders in dark clothes and bandanas swept down from the ridge, their horses' hooves churning the spring mud. They moved with terrible efficiency, surrounding the wagons before anyone could mount a proper defense. Emma bit down on her fist to keep from crying out as she saw her father emerge from their wagon, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. The raiders' leader, a tall man with cold eyes visible above his mask, simply raised his pistol and fired. Her mother's scream pierced the morning air, followed by another shot that silenced it forever. Little James, her 6-year-old brother, never even made it out of the wagon. The attack lasted no more than 15 minutes, but to Emma, crouched in her hiding place, with rain beginning to fall, it felt like hours. The raiders systematically searched each wagon, taking everything of value, including her father's medical supplies and the strongbox containing the group's pooled funds for purchasing land. They set fire to what remained, the flames hissing and sputtering in the increasing downpour. As the last rider disappeared over the ridge, Emma remained frozen, in place. The rain fell harder now, mixing with the smoke from burning wagons to create an acrid fog that burned her throat. She stayed hidden as the storm intensified, watching the fires die out one by one until only charred skeletons remained of the homes on wheels that had carried her family's dreams westward. Night fell before Emma finally emerged from her hiding place. Her dress was soaked through, her blonde hair plastered to her face, and her whole body shook from cold and shock. She approached the nearest wagon, not her family's. She couldn't bear to look there yet, and found old Mr. Henderson lying face down in the mud, his pipe still clutched in his hand. The sight sent her stumbling backward, and she fell to her knees, retching. When the spasms passed, Emma forced herself to think. She needed to find help, but the nearest settlement was days away, and she had no idea which direction to go. The storm had washed away any tracks she might have followed. As she stood there in the darkness, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her situation, a sound made her freeze. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, approaching through the underbrush. Emma's first instinct was to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The footsteps drew closer, and through the gloom, she saw a figure emerge from the trees. He was tall and moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural in the darkness. As he stepped into a patch of moonlight breaking through the clouds, Emma saw that he was Cherokee, wearing a mix of traditional and settler clothing, with long black hair tied back and keen eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The man stopped when he saw her, his expression shifting from wariness to surprise, and then to something Emma couldn't quite read. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the devastated campsite, neither moving nor speaking. Then, slowly, the man crouched down, making himself less threatening. "Little one," he said in accented but clear English, "are you alone?" Emma nodded, unable to find her voice. The man's gaze swept over the destroyed wagons, taking in the scene with practiced efficiency. When he looked back at her, his dark eyes held a deep sadness. "I am Jacob Walkingstick," he said gently. "My people call me Swift River. I scout these mountains watching for trouble." He paused, studying her more closely. "You are hurt?" Emma shook her head, then reconsidered. Everything hurt, but not in ways that showed on the outside. "They're all gone," she whispered, the words feeling unreal even as she spoke them. "My mama, Papa, James, everyone." Swift River rose slowly and approached her with the same caution he might show a frightened deer. When he was close enough, he knelt again, bringing himself to her eye level. "What is your name, child?" "Emma. Emma Whitfield." "Emma," he repeated, testing the name. "You have been very brave to survive this, but you cannot stay here. More danger may come with the dawn. Where can I go?" The question came out as barely more than a breath. "I don't have anyone. I don't know the way." Swift River was quiet for a long moment, his face revealing the weight of some internal struggle. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "There is a place," he said carefully, "where my people live, deep in the blue smoke mountains. It is hidden from outsider eyes, sacred ground where few whites have ever walked." Emma's eyes widened. She had heard stories about the Cherokee, some frightening, others merely cautioning against venturing into their territory. But her father had always spoken differently. As a doctor, he had treated Cherokee patients and spoken of them with respect, teaching Emma that fear often came from misunderstanding. "Would they? Would your people help me?" she asked hesitantly. Swift River's expression remained grave. "It is not simple. My people have suffered much at the hands of yours. Even now there is talk of forcing us from our lands, sending us far to the west. Many will not welcome a white child among us." He paused, looking back at the destroyed wagons. "But I see no marks of Cherokee on this evil work. These were white men, hiding their faces and their guilt." Emma nodded eagerly. "I saw them. They wore masks, but I heard them talking. They were looking for something specific. My father's, medical supplies and a strong box." This information seemed to solidify Swift River's decision. "Then there is more to this than random violence. You may not be safe anywhere settlers gather." He stood, offering his hand. "Come." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We have far to travel before sunrise, and the path is not easy. Emma hesitated only a moment before placing her small hand in his. As she did, something caught the moonlight at her throat. A silver locket on a delicate chain. Swift River noticed it but said nothing, instead helping her to her feet. "Wait," Emma said, suddenly pulling away. She ran to where she had dropped the trillium flowers that morning, a lifetime ago now. Most were trampled, but a few remained intact. She gathered them carefully. "For my mother," she explained when she returned to Swift River's side. "It would have been her birthday tomorrow." Swift River nodded solemnly. "We will find a proper place for them. Now we must go." As they left Thunder Ridge Pass behind, Emma took one last look at the scene of destruction. The moon had broken fully through the clouds now, casting everything in sharp relief. She memorized every detail, the positions of the wagons, the scattered belongings, the way the light fell on her father's medical bag, lying abandoned in the mud. Someday, she promised herself, there would be a reckoning for what happened here. Swift River led her into the forest, moving with sure-footed confidence despite the darkness. Emma struggled to keep up, her shorter legs working twice as hard. But she refused to complain. They traveled in silence for hours, following paths that seemed invisible to Emma's eyes, but which Swift River navigated without hesitation. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, they paused at a small stream to rest and drink. Emma's legs trembled with exhaustion, and her dress was torn from catching on branches and thorns. Swift River studied her with concern. "You have spirit," he observed, offering her a piece of dried meat from his pouch, like the wolf pup that runs until its heart nearly bursts rather than show weakness. Emma accepted the food gratefully. "My father always said Whitfields don't quit," she replied, then had to blink back tears at the thought of her father. "Your father was the doctor?" Swift River asked. When Emma nodded, he continued, "I have heard of him. He treated some of my people when the settlement doctors would not. He was a good man." This unexpected connection to her father made Emma's grief fresh again, but also gave her comfort. "He believed in helping everyone," she said softly. "He used to say that under the skin we're all the same." Swift River's expression softened slightly. Wise words. Not all whites share such wisdom. He looked up at the brightening sky. "We must move again. The hardest part of our journey lies ahead." As they prepared to continue, Swift River pointed to a massive mountain range rising before them, its peaks shrouded in a bluish haze that gave the mountains their name. "There," he said, "in the heart of the Blue Smoke Mountains lies Whispering Falls Valley. It is a sacred place, known only to the Cherokee. The path is treacherous, and many of my people will question my decision to bring you there." "Then why?" "Help me?" Emma asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since he first appeared. Swift River was quiet for a long moment. "Many seasons ago, when I was young like you, I became lost in a blizzard while hunting far from our village. A white trapper found me, nearly frozen. He could have left me to die. Many would have. Instead, he carried me to his cabin and nursed me back to health. When the storm passed, he guided me back to the edge of our territory." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. He asked nothing in return, only that someday if I found someone in need, I would remember his kindness. Emma felt a surge of gratitude toward this unknown trapper who had saved Swift River years ago, making her own rescue possible. "I won't cause trouble for your people," she promised. "I'll learn your ways. I'll help however I can." Swift River smiled slightly the first time she had seen him do so. "We shall see, Emma Whitfield. The mountains have a way of revealing who we truly are." With that cryptic statement, he led her back into the forest, toward the towering peaks that would become her refuge and her trial. Neither of them could know that Emma's arrival in the hidden valley would set in motion events that would change not only her own fate, but the destiny of Swift River's people as well. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the mist and revealing the long, winding path ahead, a path that would lead a lost girl, not just to safety, but to a new understanding of family, belonging, and the bridges that can be built between worlds that seem impossibly far apart. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thinner and cooler. Emma's breath came in short gasps, but she pressed on, determined to prove herself worthy of Swift River's trust. The Cherokee scout moved with an economy of motion that made the difficult terrain seem effortless, occasionally pausing to help Emma over particularly challenging obstacles. By midday, they had entered a realm of ancient trees and hidden valleys that seemed untouched by time. Massive hemlocks and white pines towered overhead, their canopy so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight reached the forest floor. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant call of birds and the whisper of wind through branches. Swift River paused at a rocky outcrop, gesturing for Emma to rest. From their vantage point, she could see the way they had come, a Dizzying series of switchbacks and narrow ledges that seemed impossible to have traversed. The Cherokee scout knelt beside her, pulling a water skin from his pack and offering it to her. "Your strength surprises me," he said as she drank. "Most children would have given up hours ago." Emma wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, her blue eyes meeting his dark ones. "My father used to take me on house calls in the mountains back home. He said doctors need strong legs and stronger hearts." Swift River nodded, taking back the water skin. "Your father taught you well, but the path ahead grows more difficult. We must cross Crying Woman Falls before nightfall, and the way is treacherous." The name sent a shiver down Emma's spine. Why do they call it that? Long ago, a Cherokee woman lost her child to the rapids below the falls. They say her spirit still weeps there, warning others of danger. Swift River's expression grew serious. "The crossing requires absolute trust. One misstep, and the river claims you." They continued their ascent, the sound of rushing water growing louder with each step. As they rounded a bend in the trail, Emma gasped at the sight before her. A massive waterfall thundered down from a height of at least 200 feet, the mist creating permanent rainbows in the afternoon sun. But it was the crossing that made her heart sink. A series of wet, moss-covered stones leading behind the falls, with nothing but a sheer drop on one side and slick rock face on the other. Swift River studied her face carefully. "There is no shame in fear, little one, but we cannot go back, and there is no other way forward." Emma swallowed hard, her fingers unconsciously finding the silver locket at her throat. Inside were tiny portraits of her family, painted just months ago by a traveling artist. She drew strength from their memory. "I'm ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Swift River removed a length of rope from his pack, tying one end securely around his waist and the other around Emma's. "Stay close. Step only where I step. Do not look down." The crossing was everything Emma had feared and worse. The stones were slick with spray, and the thundering water created a deafening roar that made communication impossible. Halfway across, her foot slipped on the moss-covered rock. For a terrifying moment, she teetered on the edge, the abyss yawning below. But Swift River's strong hand caught her arm, steadying her until she found her balance again. When they finally reached the other side, Emma's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto solid ground, her whole body shaking. Swift River knelt beside her, his usually stoic face showing concern. "You did well," he said, untying the rope. "Few grown men would have managed that crossing with such courage." Emma looked back at the falls, hardly believing what she had just done. "I heard her," she whispered. The crying woman, she sounded sad but not angry, like she was saying goodbye. Swift River's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You heard the spirit? That is unusual for one not of our blood." He studied her more closely, as if seeing her for the first time. "Perhaps the mountains recognize something in you." As the sun began to sink toward the western peaks, they entered a narrow canyon where the walls seemed to close in on either side. Ancient pictographs adorned the rock faces, images of hunters, animals, and celestial symbols that Emma couldn't interpret. Swift River noticed her interest. "These tell the story of my people's journey to these mountains," he explained. "How the Great Spirit led us to this sacred place and taught us to live in harmony with the land." "Will your people tell stories about me?" Emma asked, then immediately felt foolish for the question. But Swift River considered her words seriously. All encounters leave marks, like these paintings on stone. What story they tell depends on what happens next. As twilight deepened, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a sheer cliff, face rising impossibly high above them. Emma's heart sank. After everything they had overcome, would they have to turn back now? Swift River approached the cliff and ran his hands along the rock face, searching for something. After a moment, he pressed against what looked like solid stone, and to Emma's amazement, a section of the rock swung inward, revealing a hidden passage. "The ancestors were clever," he said with a hint of pride. "This is one of several secret ways into Whispering Falls Valley. Few among my own people know all of them." The passage was narrow and dark, forcing them to proceed in single file. Emma kept one hand on the wall and the other on Swift River's back, trusting him to guide her through the blackness. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, they emerged into moonlight, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. They stood on a high ledge overlooking a valley more beautiful than anything she had imagined. Moonlight silvered a river that wound through meadows dotted with wildflowers. Traditional Cherokee dwellings were scattered throughout the valley, their fires creating points of warm light in the darkness. In the distance, she could hear the sound of drums and singing. "Welcome to Whispering Falls Valley," Swift River said softly. "Home of the Eastern Cherokee, who have chosen to remain in our ancestral lands, hidden from those who would force us to leave." As they began their descent into the valley, Emma noticed movement in the shadows. Figures emerged from the darkness. Cherokee, warriors who had been standing guard. They spoke rapidly with Swift River in their own language, their voices rising in what sounded like disbelief and concern. Emma caught them glancing at her repeatedly, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. One warrior, taller than the others with 3 eagle feathers in his hair, stepped forward and addressed Swift River in English. "You bring a white child to our sacred valley? Have you lost your senses, Swift River? I bring a child in need of sanctuary standing bare," Swift River replied calmly. "One who has suffered at the hands of her own people and has nowhere else to turn." Standing Bear's eyes narrowed as he studied Emma. "The whites speak often of sanctuary while they take our lands. Why should we offer what they deny us?" "Because we are not them," Swift River answered. "Because the Creator teaches us that compassion knows no color." The debate continued as they walked, other Cherokee joining them as word spread of the unprecedented arrival. By the time they reached the center of the settlement, it seemed the entire village had gathered. Emma stayed close to Swift River, overwhelmed by the attention and the rapid exchanges in a language she couldn't understand. An elderly woman emerged from the largest dwelling, her presence immediately commanding respect. Her silver hair was woven with beads and feathers, and despite her age, she moved with remarkable grace. The crowd parted before her as she approached. "Grandmother Ayita," Swift River said, bowing his head respectfully, "I seek your wisdom." The woman called Ayita circled Emma slowly, her dark eyes taking in every detail. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of years beyond counting. "You have brought storm clouds to our peaceful valley, grandson. Explain yourself." Swift River recounted finding Emma at Thunder Ridge Pass, describing the massacre and his decision to bring her to the valley. As he spoke, Ayita's expression remained unreadable, though Emma noticed her eyes soften slightly when Swift River mentioned the murder of Emma's family. When he finished, Ayita addressed Emma directly in accented but clear English. "Child, show me your hands." Confused, but obedient, Emma held out her hands, palms up. They were scratched and blistered from the journey, dirt ground into the creases. Ayita took them gently in her own weathered hands, studying them carefully. "Healer's hands," she pronounced finally, "like her father before her." She looked at Swift River. "You did not mention the birthmark." Emma instinctively touched her left shoulder, where a port wine birthmark in the shape of a bird in flight had always been. "How did you know?" Ayita's eyes held secrets Emma couldn't fathom. "The spirits speak to those who listen. Come, child, we have much to discuss." As Ayita led Emma toward her dwelling, Standing Bear stepped forward again. "Grandmother, surely you cannot mean to let her stay. The prophecy speaks of—" "I know well what the prophecy speaks of," Ayita interrupted sharply. "Perhaps better than you, Standing Bear. The council will meet at sunrise to decide the child's fate. Until then, she is under my protection." Inside Ayita's dwelling, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and smoke. Bundles of plants hung from the ceiling beams, and various pots and baskets lined the walls. Ayita gestured for Emma to sit on a woven mat near the central fire. "You have your father's eyes," the old woman said, settling across from her. "I met him once, years ago. He came to trade medical knowledge with our healers. A good man who saw beyond the barriers others build." "You knew my father," Emma's voice cracked with emotion. "Only briefly, but memorably. He spoke of his daughter, how he hoped she would follow his path as a healer." Ayita added herbs to a pot over the fire. "Now fate brings that daughter to us, in our hour of greatest need." "I don't understand," Emma said. "What hour of need? What prophecy was Standing Bear talking about?" Ayita was quiet for a long moment, stirring the pot thoughtfully. "There is an old prophecy among our people, passed down through generations. It speaks of a time when the Cherokee would face their greatest trial, forced from their lands, scattered like leaves before a storm. But it also speaks of hope. A pale child marked by the wings of a bird would come among us, bridging two worlds. When the need was greatest." Emma's hand went automatically to her birthmark. "But I'm just a girl. I don't know anything about bridging worlds." "Prophecies rarely announce themselves with clarity," Ayita replied. "They unfold like morning mist, revealing their truth slowly." She poured the herbal mixture into a clay cup and handed it to Emma. "Drink. It will help you sleep and dream truly." As Emma sipped the bitter tea, exhaustion began to overtake her. Ayita prepared a sleeping place with soft furs and woven blankets. "Rest now, child. Tomorrow brings challenges enough." But sleep didn't come easily. Through the dwelling's entrance, Emma could hear continued debate outside, voices raised in argument. Some seemed to speak in her defense, others against. Swift River's voice was among them, steady and calm, but she could hear the strain in it. When dreams finally came, they were vivid and strange. She saw her father walking through the valley, stopping to examine plants with Cherokee healers. She saw her mother singing while hanging laundry, little James chasing fireflies in the dusk. But the dream shifted, showing her things she couldn't have seen. Masked riders meeting in secret, passing gold coins, spreading false evidence about Cherokee raids. She woke before dawn to find Ayita sitting beside her, the old woman's eyes, knowing. "You dreamed truly," Ayita said. It wasn't a question. "I saw things," Emma whispered. "Things about the men who attacked us. They're planning more raids, making it look like your people are responsible." Ayita nodded gravely. "The spirits show you this for a reason. But such knowledge brings danger. There are those who would silence you permanently to protect their schemes." As the first light of dawn painted the eastern sky, drums began to sound, calling the village to council. Emma's stomach churned with anxiety. Would they let her stay? Would they turn her away to face the dangers alone? Swift River appeared at the dwelling entrance. "It is time," he said simply. The council gathered in a circular clearing at the heart of the village. 7 elders sat in a semicircle with Ayita at the center. The entire community formed a larger circle around them, creating an amphitheater of faces in the growing light. Standing Bear spoke first, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "We all know why we gather. Swift River has brought an outsider to our sacred valley, a white child whose people even now plot to drive us from these mountains. I say she cannot stay. The risk is too great." Murmurs of agreement rose from some in the crowd. A woman holding a baby called out, "What if soldiers come looking for her? We have children of our own to protect." Swift River stepped forward. "I understand your fears, but I ask you to remember our teachings. When the Creator made the world, did he not make all peoples? This child has lost everything: family, home, safety. If we turn her away, we become no better than those who would drive us from our lands." An elder named White Oak raised his hand for silence. "Let the child speak for herself. What do you say, girl? Why should the Cherokee risk everything for one white child?" Emma stood on trembling legs, aware of every eye upon her. She thought of her father's words about helping others regardless of differences, of the kindness Swift River had shown her, of the dream vision that had revealed the conspiracy against the Cherokee. "I don't ask you to risk everything for me," she began, her voice small but clear. "I know I'm not one of you, but I also know what I saw at Thunder Ridge Pass. The men who killed my family weren't Cherokee. They were white men pretending to be Cherokee. They're trying to turn everyone against you so they can take your lands." She pulled the locket from beneath her dress, opening it to show the tiny portraits inside. "This is all I have left of my family. My father was a doctor who helped anyone who needed it, Cherokee or white. He taught me that we're all human beings deserving of kindness. I can't go back to the settlements. The men who killed my family might find me, but more than that, I want to help stop what they're planning. I know herbs and healing from my father. I can be useful. Please just give me a chance to prove it." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then Ayita arose, her presence commanding absolute attention. "I have consulted the spirits through the night," she announced. "The signs are clear. This child's arrival is no accident. The birthmark she bears, the dreams that come to her, the knowledge she possesses, all point to a greater purpose." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But prophecy does not remove the need for choice. We must decide, will we let fear guide us or faith?" The council members conferred in low voices. Standing Bear still looked troubled, but something in Emma's words seemed to have affected him. Finally, White Oak spoke for the council. "The child may stay, but under strict conditions. She must learn our ways, our language, our customs. She must contribute to the community's welfare, and if danger comes because of her presence, the council reserves the right to revisit this decision." Relief flooded through Emma, making her knees weak. Swift River placed a steadying hand on her shoulder as Ayita stepped forward. "There is one more thing," the medicine woman said. "If she is to live among us, she must have a Cherokee name. I propose we call her Awanasa, my home, for she must make her home with us now and we with her." The name rippled through the crowd, some nodding approval, others still looking uncertain. But it was decided. Emma Whitfield would become Awanasa, beginning a new chapter in a story that was far from over. As the council dispersed, a young Cherokee girl about Emma's age approached shyly. She had bright, intelligent eyes and wore her hair in 2 long braids decorated with carved bone beads. "I am Mary Birdsong," she said in careful English. "My mother says I am to help you learn our ways. Would you like to see where you will stay?" Emma, now Awanasa, nodded gratefully. As Mary led her through the village, pointing out important landmarks and introducing her to various community members, Emma felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine, but for the first time since Thunder Ridge Pass, she wasn't facing it alone. Behind them, Swift River watched with Ayita, his expression thoughtful. "You see more than you have shared, grandmother," he observed quietly. Ayita's ancient eyes tracked the 2 girls as they disappeared among the dwellings. The wheels of fate turn in ways we cannot always foresee. That child carries more than grief in her heart. She carries the power to change everything, for better or worse. That remains to be seen, but I fear the storm that follows her has only begun. Together, we must prepare for what comes next. High above the valley, a red-tailed hawk circled in the morning thermals, its cry echoing off the mountain walls, a herald of changes yet to come. The weeks following Emma's acceptance into the Cherokee community were filled with challenges that tested her resolve daily. Her transformation from Emma Whitfield to our Nasa, my home, required more than just a change of name. Mary Birdsong proved to be a patient teacher, though sometimes Emma caught flashes of frustration in her new friend's eyes when she struggled with seemingly simple tasks. "No, no," Mary said for the third time that morning, demonstrating the proper way to grind corn. "You must use circular motions, like the moon travels across the sky. Your way wastes strength and makes uneven meal." Emma's arms ached from the unfamiliar work, and blisters were forming on her palms despite the calluses she'd developed during her journey with Swift River. Back home, their cook had handled such tasks, and Emma had only helped with lighter household duties. But she gritted her teeth and adjusted her technique, determined not to give Standing Bear or the other skeptics any reason to question the council's decision. "Better," Mary approved, then added more gently, "It takes time. My mother says I complained for a whole moon when I first learned." Across the workspace, several Cherokee women prepared food for the evening meal, their conversations flowing in the musical cadences of their language. Emma had been working hard to learn Cherokee, but the complex tonal system still confused her. She could understand simple phrases and was beginning to recognize patterns, but full conversations remained largely mysterious. One of the women, Mourning Dove, Mary's mother, approached with a basket of fresh herbs. She spoke to Emma in slow, careful Cherokee, gesturing to the plants. Emma recognized the words for medicine and learn and nodded eagerly. Her father's training had included extensive knowledge of medicinal plants, and she'd been hoping for an opportunity to demonstrate this skill. Mourning Dove spread the herbs on a clean mat, naming each one in Cherokee and indicating its use through gestures. Emma's excitement grew as she recognized several plants, though they were called by different names here. When Mourning Dove held up a plant with distinctive serrated leaves, Emma couldn't contain herself. "Yarrow?" she exclaimed, then caught herself and tried to remember the Cherokee word Mary had taught her. Uda kahi." Mourning Dove's eyebrows rose in surprise, and she nodded approvingly. Emma pointed to a small cut on her own arm from gathering firewood the day before, then demonstrated how the yarrow could be used to stop bleeding. The other women gathered closer, suddenly more interested in the pale child who knew their healing plants. Encouraged, Emma identified several more herbs, sharing what her father had taught her about their properties. When she correctly identified and explained the use of golden seal, a plant highly valued by Cherokee healers, Mourning Dove called out something that brought Grandmother Aita from her dwelling. The medicine woman examined Emma's work with the herbs, asking questions through Mary's translation. Emma explained how her father had learned some of his herbal knowledge from Cherokee healers he'd befriended, and how he'd passed that knowledge to her during their mountain house calls. "Your father was wise to learn from many sources," Aita said approvingly. "Knowledge, like water, flows best when it moves between peoples. Come, there is something I wish to show you." Aita led Emma to a secluded grove behind her dwelling, where medicinal plants grew in careful arrangement. Some Emma recognized, others were completely foreign to her. The old woman moved among them with reverence, touching certain leaves and murmuring words that sounded like prayers or greetings. "This is my medicine garden," Aita explained. "Each plant has been cultivated and blessed according to our traditions. Some have grown here for generations, tended by healers before me. She stopped before an unusual plant with star-shaped purple flowers. This one we call the Spirit Bridge. It grows nowhere else but these mountains. Our ancestors say it can heal wounds of both body and soul. Emma studied the plant carefully, committing its appearance to memory. I've never seen anything like it. What's it used for? That knowledge comes with time and trust, Ayita replied. But I sense in you the makings of a true healer. Would you learn our medicine ways, Awinasa? The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Emma understood she was being offered something precious, knowledge that outsiders were rarely permitted to learn. Yes, grandmother, I would be honored. Then we begin tomorrow at dawn. But know this, our healing is not just about plants and remedies. It involves understanding the connection between all living things, between the physical and spiritual worlds. Are you prepared for such learning? Emma thought of her father, how he'd always said that healing was about more than treating symptoms. It was about understanding the whole person. I think my father would have wanted me to learn everything I could about healing, no matter. The source, Ayita smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face. Then perhaps the prophecy unfolds as it should. That evening, as the community gathered for the communal meal, Emma noticed a subtle shift in how some regarded her. Word of her knowledge of healing plants had spread, and several people nodded to her with newfound respect. Even Standing Bear, serving as firekeeper for the evening, seemed slightly less hostile. But the peaceful atmosphere was disrupted when one of the village scouts burst into the clearing, speaking urgently to the council members. Emma caught only fragments, something about riders and soldiers and questions in the valley below. Swift River appeared at her side as the adults conferred in worried tones. Trouble? Emma asked quietly. Perhaps. Our scouts report a group of soldiers asking questions in the settlements about a missing white girl. They claim to be searching for survivors of an Indian attack at Thunder Ridge Pass. Emma's heart clenched. But the attackers weren't... I know, Swift River interrupted. But someone has convinced the army otherwise. They're showing a drawing that could be you. Ayita joined them, her expression grave. The council meets tonight to discuss this development. You should be present, Awinasa. This concerns you directly. The emergency council gathering took place in the ceremonial lodge, a larger structure used for important meetings and rituals. Torches cast flickering shadows on the walls as the 7 elders took their places. Emma sat between Swift River and Ayita, trying to appear calm despite her racing heart. Standing Bear spoke first, his voice heavy with concern. The soldiers seek a white girl supposedly taken captive by Cherokee raiders. They offer reward money for information. How long before someone in the lower valleys mentions strange activity in these mountains? Our people know better than to speak of the sacred valleys, White Oak countered. The old agreements hold. Do they? Standing Bear challenged. When white men wave gold before hungry eyes, when they threaten consequences for harboring fugitives? Swift River stood to address the council. I have learned more about these soldiers. They are led by Captain William Harrington, known to be an honest man, but he acts on information provided by others, including a man named Theodore Blackwood. The name meant nothing to Emma, but she saw several elders exchange meaningful glances. Blackwood, Ayita said with distaste. The land speculator who has been trying to claim mineral rights in our territories. He grows bold. He was one of them, Emma said suddenly, the realization hitting her like cold water. At Thunder Ridge Pass, I couldn't see faces because of the masks, but I remember voices. There was a man giving orders. His voice was cultured, educated. The others called him Mr. B. The council absorbed this information with growing alarm. If Blackwood was behind both the massacre and the search for Emma, the danger was even greater than they'd realized. We should move deeper into the mountains, suggested an elder named Redhawk. The winter caves are still prepared and abandoned. Our crops just before harvest, Mourning Dove protested. Our children need the food we've grown. The debate continued, voices rising with tension and fear. Emma felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. These people had risked everything to give her sanctuary, and now her presence threatened their safety. "I should leave," she said quietly, but in the sudden silence that followed, everyone heard. "If I go to the soldiers, tell them I've been surviving alone, maybe they'll stop searching these mountains." "No!" The word came from an unexpected source, Standing Bear. The warrior who had opposed her presence now faced her with something like respect. "You spoke truth to us about the massacre. If Blackwood seeks to silence that truth, we cannot hand you to him. But your people are not strangers to hardship," Standing Bear finished. "We have faced worse threats and survived. The question is not whether you stay, but how we protect our valley while seeking justice for your family and our people." Ayita rose, commanding attention. "There is another way. The autumn gathering approaches when Cherokee from many villages meet at Echota. Leaders and elders will be there, including those with influence among the whites. If we can present evidence of Blackwood's crimes to the right people." "You suggest we take our case to the tribal council?" White Oak asked. "Reveal what happened at Thunder Ridge Pass?" "More than that," Ayita replied. "I suggest we play Blackwood's game better than he does. He uses lies to turn whites against Cherokee. We use truth to expose his schemes to both peoples." The plan that emerged from that night's council was daring and dangerous. Emma would remain hidden in the valley, while Swift River and others gathered evidence of Blackwood's conspiracy. They would document everything: the false evidence against the Cherokee, the connection between the massacre and Blackwood's land schemes, even Emma's own testimony carefully recorded. Meanwhile, preparation for Emma's integration into Cherokee life intensified. If she was to remain among them, possibly for a long time, she needed to become as much a part of the community as possible. This meant accelerating her education in Cherokee ways, language, and customs. The following morning, Emma's training as a healer began in earnest. Ayita woke her before dawn, leading her to the medicine garden, where mist still clung to the leaves. "First lesson," the old woman said, "respect. We do not take from the plants without giving thanks. Each has a spirit, a purpose in the great web of life." She demonstrated the proper way to address the plants before harvesting, offering tobacco, and speaking words of gratitude. Emma followed her example, feeling slightly foolish at first, but gradually sensing a rightness to the ritual. They worked through the morning, Ayita teaching her to identify plants by subtle differences in leaf shape, stem color, and even smell. Emma learned that timing was crucial. Some plants were only effective when harvested, at certain times of day or seasons. Others required specific preparation methods passed down through generations. "Your people's medicine is powerful," Ayita acknowledged, as Emma demonstrated how to prepare a willow bark tincture for pain. "But you rely too much on taking apart, understanding pieces. Our way sees the whole: plant, person, spirit, community, all connected." As days passed, Emma found herself thinking less like a doctor's daughter and more like a Cherokee healer in training. She learned that illness could have spiritual as well as physical causes, that the medicine person's role extended beyond treating symptoms to restoring balance in all aspects of life. Mary Birdsong became her constant companion, helping her navigate the complex social structures of Cherokee society. Emma learned about the 7 clans: wolf, deer, bird, paint, blue, wild potato, and long hair, and how they governed everything from marriage to justice. She discovered that Cherokee society was matrilineal, with property and clan membership passing through the mother's line. "You're getting better at the stickball game," Mary observed one afternoon as they watched the young men practice. The Sport was fast and violent, like a combination of lacrosse and warfare, played with minimal rules and maximum intensity. "Only because you keep making me practice," Emma replied, rubbing a bruise on her shin. "I thought girls didn't play. Not in the formal games, but we learn. Everyone should know how to defend themselves." Mary's expression grew serious. "My grandmother says dark times are coming. The whites want all Cherokee to move west, to strange lands far from our mountains." Emma had heard whispers of this, the Indian Removal Act, they called it. The thought of these people being forced from their ancestral homes made her sick with anger and helplessness. "Maybe it won't happen," she said without conviction. "Maybe." Mary didn't sound hopeful. "But grandmother says the signs are clear. That's why some people think the prophecy about you might be real. A pale child coming to us, just as our greatest trial begins." The weight of expectation in Mary's words made Emma uncomfortable. She was just a girl who had lost everything and been given shelter. How could she possibly affect the fate of an entire people? But as the days shortened toward autumn, events began to accelerate in ways that would test everyone's expectations. Swift River returned from a scouting mission with troubling news. Blackwood had increased the reward for information about the captive white girl, and soldiers were systematically searching the foothills. Worse, there were rumors of Cherokee being harassed in the settlements, accused of harboring fugitives. The carefully maintained separation between the hidden valley and the outside world was beginning to fray. "We cannot wait for the autumn gathering," Swift River reported to the council. "Blackwood grows desperate. He knows someone survived who can expose his crimes." That night, Emma lay awake on her sleeping mat, listening to the night sounds of the valley. An owl called from the forest, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled at the rising moon. She fingered the silver locket at her throat, thinking of her family. "I won't let him win," she whispered to their memory. "I'll find a way to make this right." She didn't know then that fate was already moving pieces into position, that soon she would face a choice that would determine not just her own future, but the destiny of all those who had given her sanctuary in the hidden valley of Whispering Falls. The next morning brought the first frost of the season, silvering the grass and warning of winter's approach. As Emma helped gather the last of the harvest crops, she noticed increased activity among the warriors. Weapons were being cleaned and repaired, supplies organized for quick movement if necessary. Standing Bear approached as she worked, his face grave. "Awenasa," he said, using her Cherokee name for the first time. "The council has decided. We will not wait to be discovered. Instead, we will take our truth to those who need to hear it." "What do you mean?" "There is to be a gathering, not the Autumn Council, but something more immediate. Cherokee leaders, sympathetic whites, even some military officials who question Blackwood's version of events. It will be dangerous, but necessary." Emma's pulse quickened. "And my part in this?" Standing Bear studied her for a long moment. "You must decide whether to remain hidden or to step forward as the witness who can destroy Blackwood's lies. The choice is yours, but know that whatever you decide will change everything." As the sun climbed higher, painting the mountain peaks in shades of gold and crimson, Emma felt the weight of destiny settling on her young shoulders. The butterfly that had led her away from the wagons at Thunder Ridge Pass had set in motion, events that now rushed toward a conclusion she couldn't yet see. But one thing was becoming clear: her survival hadn't been mere chance. Whether prophecy or providence, she had been preserved for a purpose. Now she had to find the courage to fulfill it, whatever the cost. In the days that followed, the hidden valley buzzed with preparation. Messages were sent through secret channels, plans laid with careful precision. Emma continued her training, but now with new urgency. She was no longer just learning to survive among the Cherokee. She was preparing to stand as a bridge between two worlds at a moment when the fate of both hung in the balance. The morning of departure came too soon. As Emma adjusted the Cherokee, dress she now wore with comfort, Mary Birdsong appeared with a gift, a small medicine bag decorated with the symbols of protection and courage. "For your journey," Mary said solemnly. "Whatever happens, you are one of us now. Remember that." Emma accepted the gift with gratitude, adding it to the collection of talismans she carried. Her family's locket, the herbs from Aita, and now this token of friendship from the girl who had become like a sister to her. As the traveling party assembled at the valley's hidden entrance, Emma took one last look at the place that had become her refuge. The morning mist clung to the river, and somewhere in the forest, a whippoorwill called its haunting song. Swift River appeared at her side, dressed for travel but carrying himself with new purpose. "Are you ready, Awanasa?" Emma touched the medicine bag at her waist, felt the weight of the locket at her throat, and remembered her father's words about helping others regardless of the cost. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. Together, they stepped through the hidden passage, leaving the sanctuary of Whispering Falls Valley to face whatever destiny awaited in the world beyond. The butterfly's path had led her here, but the journey forward was hers to choose, and choose she would with all the courage of her two names, Emma Whitfield and Awanasa, the girl who had found her home among strangers and discovered that sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born to. The journey to confront Blackwood and expose the truth began with the autumn mists cloaking the higher reaches of the Blue Smoke Mountains. Emma, or Awanasa, as she had come to think of herself, rode beside Swift River and Standing Bear along hidden trails that few white men had ever trod. Their small party moved with purposeful stealth, avoiding the main paths where army patrols might lurk. "We need to reach Chestnut Creek by nightfall," Swift River told her as they descended a particularly treacherous slope. "A friend waits there, someone who can help us reach New Echota undetected." Emma nodded, her thoughts churning like the rapid waters they'd crossed at dawn. 4 weeks of intensive Cherokee language training with grandmother Aita had sharpened her mind, but the responsibility weighing on her young shoulders remained almost unbearable. She alone could expose Theodore Blackwood's murderous scheme. She alone could clear the Cherokee of blame for the Thunder Ridge Pass massacre. But at what cost? "You're quiet today," Standing Bear observed, surprising her. The warrior had gradually moved from outright hostility to grudging acceptance, but conversation between them remained rare. "I'm thinking about what happens after," Emma admitted. "Even if we succeed, even if Blackwood is punished, will it change anything for your people?" Standing Bear's expression darkened. "The white man's hunger for our land runs deeper than one man's greed. Blackwood is but a wave. Upon the surface, beneath lies an ocean of desire. Then why risk everything?" Emma's hand found the silver locket at her throat, the last tangible connection to her murdered family. "If nothing will change." "Justice matters," Swift River interjected quietly. "Truth matters. Even when the mountain seems too high to climb, we take the next step forward. That is the Cherokee way." By sunset, they reached Chestnut Creek, where the trees blazed with autumn color, deep crimsons, vibrant golds, and fierce oranges painting the forest like nature's final defiance. Before winter, there, camped beside the bubbling waters, they found a most unexpected ally. A white man dressed in the rough garb of a mountain trapper, his beard shot through with gray, his eyes carrying the wisdom of one who had seen much in his long years. "Elias Cameron," Swift River said, making introductions. "Friend to the Cherokee for 20 summers. Elias, this is Emma Whitfield, the survivor I told you about." The old trapper studied Emma with keen interest. "Heard you'd been living among The Cherokee learning their ways. That true, girl? Yes, sir, Emma replied. They took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Saved my life. Elias nodded slowly. Most settlers wouldn't believe that. Too set in their thinking about savages and scalping. But I've known the Cherokee longer than most. Honorable people. More civilized than half the white men I've met. He gestured toward their modest camp. Come, share my fire. We have much to discuss before morning. Over a dinner of venison stew, Elias revealed information that changed everything. He had been tracking Blackwood's movements for months, suspicious of the land speculator's sudden wealth and political connections. Been following the money, the trapper explained, using a stick to draw in the dirt. Blackwood's bought half. The officials in 3 counties been acquiring land options all along the old Cherokee hunting grounds, land he can't legally possess while the tribe holds treaty rights. Unless the Cherokee are removed, Standing Bear added grimly. Exactly. Elias tapped the dirt map emphatically, but Blackwood's impatient. Rather than wait for the government to force removal, which could take years with all the legal wrangling, he's manufacturing reasons to speed things up, creating incidents to turn public opinion against the Cherokee. Like murdering 12 families and blaming it on Indian raiders, Emma said bitterly. Worse than that, I'm afraid. Elias pulled a folded document from his jacket. Got this from a clerk in Blackwood's office. A man with enough conscience left to be troubled by what he's seen. It outlines plans for 3 more attacks, each designed to look like Cherokee raids. The next is scheduled for 2 days from now, at Miller's Crossing. Swift River's expression hardened. We must warn them. I've sent word, Elias assured him, but warning ain't enough. We need to catch Blackwood's men in the act. Need irrefutable proof that white men are behind these killings. But our priority is getting Emma to New Echota, Standing Bear objected. The council meeting has been delayed, Elias interrupted. John Ross sent word yesterday. Tribal leaders can't gather for another week. Some business with the federal Indian agents demanding attention first. Emma looked from face to face, understanding dawning. You want to set a trap at Miller's Crossing. Smart girl. Elias nodded approvingly. This could be our best chance to gather evidence that even the most prejudiced official couldn't ignore. But it's dangerous work. I'll do it, Emma said immediately. The others stared at her. I survived once. I can help make sure no one else loses their family to Blackwood's schemes. Swift River shook his head firmly. Too dangerous. You are our witness, Awanasa. We cannot risk. My parents died because of this man's greed, Emma interrupted, her voice steady despite the emotion churning inside her. My brother died. Everyone I knew died. If I can help prevent other families from suffering the same fate, then that's exactly what I should do. Standing Bear studied her with new respect. The girl has courage. Courage ain't always enough, Elias warned, but I reckon with proper planning we might just pull this off. That night, as the others slept, Emma sat awake beside the dying embers of their fire. Above her, the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a great celestial river, each star a soul watching over the living. She wondered if her parents and little James were among them, guiding her path through the darkness ahead. Can't sleep? Swift River's voice came softly as he settled beside her. Too much thinking, Emma admitted. About tomorrow, about what comes after. The Cherokee scout was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the stars. When I was a boy, he finally said, my grandfather told me that we live many lives within one life. Each sunrise offers the chance to begin anew. Perhaps what comes after depends on how we face each new dawn. I'm afraid, Emma confessed, not of dying, of failing, of letting down everyone who's counting on me. Swift River nodded, understanding. Fear is a faithful companion on any important journey. The brave are not those without fear, but those who walk forward despite it. Is that a Cherokee saying? A ghost of a smile crossed his usually stoic features. Perhaps, or perhaps just the wisdom of one who has faced his own fears many times. Dawn brought renewed purpose and detailed planning. Miller's Crossing was a small settlement, just 7 families homesteading along the North Fork River. They had good relations with nearby Cherokee, trading regularly and even intermarrying in some cases. This made them a perfect target for Blackwood's false flag operations. Their deaths would seem especially shocking and treacherous. Elias outlined their strategy as they rode. Settlements been warned. Most folks are leaving today, making it look like they're headed to market in Parkerville. They'll circle back after dark and hide in the root cellars. Blackwood's men won't find sleeping victims, but they won't know that until they're already committed to the attack. And we'll be waiting, Standing Bear added grimly, checking his rifle. Along with a dozen Cherokee warriors and a handful of white men who still believe in justice, Elias confirmed, including Captain William Harrington. This was news to Emma, the army captain, but isn't he the one hunting me? Harrington's a good man in a difficult position, Elias explained. He's been having doubts about Blackwood's version of events. When I approached him with our suspicions, he agreed to see for himself, unofficially. They reached the densely wooded hills overlooking Miller's Crossing by mid-afternoon. The settlement looked peaceful from their vantage point, a cluster of log cabins with smoke rising from chimneys, laundry flapping on lines, chickens pecking in dusty yards. But Emma could see unusual activity, wagons being loaded, livestock gathered, children's toys being collected. The families are preparing to leave, Swift River observed, but making it appear unhurried, normal. Good, Elias grunted. Blackwood's spies would notice anything unusual. As twilight approached, they made their way down to the settlement, moving carefully to avoid being seen. Most of the families had departed by then, leaving cabins that appeared occupied but were actually empty. Lanterns had been left burning in windows. Rocking chairs on porches had been arranged to seem recently abandoned, as if their occupants had just stepped inside. Captain Harrington awaited them in the largest cabin, a sober-faced man with graying temples and the bearing of one accustomed to command. His eyes widened at the sight of Emma. "Miss Whitfield," he said, clearly shocked. "You're alive, and—" He took in her Cherokee clothing, the way she stood comfortably alongside Swift River and Standing Bear. "You're with them, willingly." "I am, Captain," Emma replied steadily. "The Cherokee saved my life when my family was murdered. They've protected me ever since." Harrington's brow furrowed. "But the reports said were false," Emma finished for him, "deliberately false, to blame the Cherokee for killings committed by white men working for Theodore Blackwood. These are serious accusations, young lady." "Yes, sir, that's why we're here, to prove them beyond any doubt." Harrington studied her, then looked to Elias. "You vouch for her story?" "Every word," the trapper confirmed, "and tonight, God willing, we'll have proof that even the governor can't ignore." As darkness settled over Miller's Crossing, they took their positions. Emma remained with Swift River in the main cabin, watching through a narrow gap in the shuttered window. Cherokee warriors and Harrington's trusted men concealed themselves throughout the settlement. Then began the long, tense wait. Hours crept by. A quarter moon rose, casting silvery light over the deserted yards. An owl called from the forest edge, answered by another deeper in the trees. Emma's legs cramped from standing motionless for so long, but she dared not move or speak. Just as she began to wonder if their information had been wrong, Swift River tensed beside her. His hand touched her arm in warning, and she strained to see what had alerted him. Shadows moved at the edge of the clearing, men on horseback approaching, slowly from the east. As they emerged into the moonlight, Emma counted 12 riders, their faces concealed beneath bandanas pulled high. But their clothing was unmistakably white men's attire, despite the Cherokee-style feathers and beading they'd attached to their hats and saddles. "There," Swift River whispered. "The disguise." The riders pulled up in the center of the settlement, conferring in low voices. One seemed to be giving orders, gesturing toward different cabins. They dismounted, drawing weapons, knives, hatchets, and pistols designed for close, quiet killing. Emma's heart hammered in her chest as the men spread out, each approaching. A different cabin. The leader, a tall man with distinctive silver-handled pistols, headed directly for the house where she and Swift River hid. "Steady," Swift River murmured. "Wait for the signal." The man reached the porch, his boots making barely a sound on the wooden planks. Through the gap in the shutters, Emma could see him clearly now. Could see his cold eyes above the bandana as he peered through the window, seemingly satisfied by the glow of the lantern inside. He reached for the door handle, turned it slowly and pushed the door open. A shrill whistle cut the night, Harrington's signal. Immediately, lanterns blazed to life throughout the settlement as hidden defenders emerged from concealment, weapons. "Ready! Don't move!" Harrington's authoritative voice rang out. "You're surrounded!" The night erupted into chaos. Some of the attackers surrendered immediately, dropping their weapons when confronted by superior numbers. Others tried to fight or flee, leading to brief, violent struggles. The leader in the doorway spun around, silver pistols drawn with startling speed. But he found himself facing not only Harrington's rifle, but also Swift River's steady aim. "Drop. Them," Harrington ordered. "Now." For a moment, the man seemed ready to risk death rather than capture. Then, with a curse, he lowered his weapons. "Remove your mask," Harrington demanded. Slowly, the man pulled down his bandana, revealing a face Emma didn't recognize, hard-featured with a scar running from eye to jaw. "Where's Blackwood?" Harrington demanded. The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Search him," Harrington ordered one of his men. The search produced a folded letter, orders detailing the attack, promising payment upon completion. The letter was unsigned, but the handwriting matched a sample of Blackwood's script that Elias had obtained. "Circumstantial," Harrington muttered. "He could deny authorship." "Check his saddlebags," Elias suggested. "Men like this don't work on promises alone. They get partial payment up front." The suggestion proved inspired. The leader's saddlebags contained a heavy purse of gold eagles, along with a distinctive silver flask engraved with elaborate initials, TB. "Theodore Blackwood," Emma whispered. But the most damning evidence came from one of the men who'd quickly surrendered, a nervous young man barely out of his teens. When questioned separately from the others and offered leniency in exchange for information, he broke down and confessed everything. "Mr. Blackwood hired us 3 weeks ago," he stammered. "Said it was government work, special operation to create support for Indian removal. Said we'd be doing the territory a service, helping progress. I didn't know there'd be killing involved. Not at first. But you participated in the Thunder Ridge Pass massacre," Harrington pressed, his voice hard. The young man's face crumpled. "I didn't kill nobody. I just helped with the horses, kept lookout. But the others, they..." He swallowed hard. "It was awful. Women, children. I ain't slept proper since." Emma stepped forward from the shadows, her presence shocking the young man to silence. "You were there," she said quietly. "I remember. Your voice. You were the one who said, 'This ain't right,' when they started burning the wagons." The color drained from his face. "You can't be. Everyone died at Thunder Ridge." "Not everyone," Emma replied. "I survived. I saw everything." By dawn, the full scope of Blackwood's conspiracy had been laid bare through multiple confessions. The captives, those who had survived the night's confrontation, were bound and loaded into wagons for transport to Parkerville, where they would face justice. Harrington had dispatched riders to arrest Blackwood himself, though Emma worried the land speculator might have allies who would warn him. "He won't escape," Harrington assured her, seeming to read her concerns. "I've sent my most trusted men by multiple routes, and these prisoners will testify against him in exchange for mercy." Standing Bear approached, his expression troubled. "Justice for these men does not address the larger threat to my people. The government still intends removal." "One battle at a time, my friend," Harrington replied, surprising Emma with his form of address. "What we've uncovered here will force many to reconsider their assumptions about your people. That's a beginning." As they prepared to depart for New Ecota, where the delayed council meeting would now have dramatically different evidence to consider, Swift River took Emma aside. "You showed great courage last night," he told her. "Your parents would be proud." "I hope so," Emma said, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had transpired. I wish they could know that their deaths didn't go unpunished." "They know," Swift River said with quiet certainty. "The ancestors walk beside us always. They see our triumphs and our struggles." Emma touched her locket, drawing comfort from his words and from the tangible connection to her family. "What happens now, after New Ecota?" Swift River's gaze turned to the distant mountains, their peaks catching the first golden light of morning. "That is for you to decide, Awanasa. You have earned the right to choose your own path forward." The thought was both liberating and terrifying. For weeks, Emma had focused solely on survival, then on exposing Blackwood's schemes. She hadn't allowed herself to think about the future, about where she truly belonged in a world that seemed determined to draw sharp lines between peoples. "I'm not ready to decide yet," she admitted. "Then do not," Swift River advised. "The path reveals itself one step at a time. For now, it leads to New Ecota. What lies beyond will become clear when the time is right." The journey to the Cherokee capital took 3 days, traveling at a pace dictated by caution rather than haste. Word of the confrontation at Miller's Crossing would spread quickly, and Blackwood had allies who might seek to silence Emma and the others before they could testify publicly. They avoided main roads and settlements, instead following ancient Cherokee paths through the mountains. Along the way, Swift River continued Emma's education, teaching her to identify useful plants, to move silently through the forest, to read the subtle signs of weather and wildlife that most white people overlooked entirely. "You have an eye for patterns," he observed after she correctly identified 3 different animal tracks in rapid succession. "That is a gift many never develop." "My father was the same way," Emma replied, the memory bittersweet. "He could diagnose illness by noticing things others missed. A slight yellowing of the eyes, a particular pattern of breathing, the specific quality of a cough." "A healer sees what others overlook," Swift River agreed, "just as a scout must." On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they reached a ridgetop overlooking a broad valley. Below, the town of New Ecota spread along the banks of the Oostenaula River, a remarkable blend of traditional Cherokee dwellings and modern American-style buildings. Emma saw a large council house, a courthouse, several churches, a printing office, and numerous well-built homes arranged along organized streets. "It's like any white settlement," she marveled, having expected something more primitive based on the frontier stories she'd heard. "The Cherokee Nation has its own constitution, laws, schools, and newspaper," Standing Bear informed her with evident pride. "We have adapted to changing times while honoring our traditions. Yet still, your government calls us savages and demands our removal." The irony wasn't lost on Emma. The massacred families at Thunder Ridge Pass had been seeking the opportunity to build what the Cherokee had already achieved. Yet it was the Cherokee who faced dispossession and exile. They entered New Echota as evening approached, riding directly to a handsome two-story home where Principal Chief John Ross received important visitors. Ross himself greeted them at the door, a dignified man of mixed Scottish and Cherokee heritage whose intelligence and determination showed in every feature. "Swift River," he acknowledged with a respectful nod, "standing bare, and this must be the remarkable young survivor I've heard about." "Emma Whitfield, sir." She introduced herself with a small curtsy, suddenly conscious of her Cherokee clothing and appearance. "Though the Cherokee call me Awinasa. My home," Ross translated with a thoughtful expression. "A good name. Please, all of you, come inside. We have much to discuss before tomorrow's council." Ross's home reflected his status and his bridging of cultures. Cherokee textiles and artwork displayed alongside European-style furniture and books in both English and Cherokee. He offered them refreshments and listened intently as they recounted the events at Miller's Crossing. "Captain Harrington has already sent word," Ross confirmed. "Blackwood was arrested this morning at his estate. He's being held under heavy guard in Parkerville, though I'm told he maintains his innocence despite the mounting evidence." "Will it be enough," Emma asked, "to clear the Cherokee of blame for the massacres?" "In the eyes of the law, yes," Ross replied carefully. "But changing hearts and minds is a longer process. Many settlers will continue to fear what they do not understand, regardless of evidence." "And the removal?" Standing Bear pressed. Ross's expression grew grim. "President Jackson remains determined. The Indian Removal Act has passed. States like Georgia refuse to recognize Cherokee sovereignty, despite Supreme Court rulings in our favor. What we've uncovered may slow the process, create sympathy for our cause, but I fear it cannot stop what has been set in motion." The somber reality settled over the room. Emma had hoped exposing Blackwood's conspiracy would somehow solve everything, would allow the Cherokee to remain on their ancestral lands, would bring true justice for her family. But the world, she was learning, rarely offered such neat resolutions. "Then why fight at all?" she asked, voicing her deepest doubt. "If nothing changes in the end?" Chief Ross studied her with compassionate understanding. "We fight because the truth matters, Miss Whitfield. We fight because surrender of principle is a greater defeat than physical dispossession. We fight so that history will record that we did not go quietly into exile, that we stood for justice even when justice seemed beyond reach." His words reminded her of what Swift River had said days earlier. "Even when the mountain seems too high to climb, we take the next step forward. That is the Cherokee way." "I'll testify," Emma said with renewed determination. "I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened at Thunder Ridge Pass and who was really responsible." The council meeting the following day exceeded all expectations. Word had spread throughout Cherokee territory and beyond. The council house, the largest building in New Echota, was filled to capacity with Cherokee leaders, white government officials, missionaries, journalists, and interested citizens from both communities. Emma had been given Cherokee formal wear for the occasion, a beautiful dress of blue trade cloth embroidered with traditional patterns, her hair arranged according to Cherokee custom, but with her own silver locket prominently displayed. As she took her place near the speaker's platform, she felt hundreds of eyes upon her, curious, skeptical, hopeful. Chief Ross opened the proceedings with dignity and restraint, explaining the purpose of the gathering without inflaming existing tensions. Then, one by one, witnesses presented evidence of Blackwood's conspiracy. Elias Cameron, with his financial investigations, Captain Harrington with the confessions and physical evidence, Swift River with his observations of the massacre. Sight. When Emma's turn came, a hush fell over the assembly. She rose on shaky legs, took a deep breath, and began to speak, Her voice, initially tremulous, grew stronger as she recounted the terrible events at Thunder Ridge Pass, how she had wandered away following a butterfly, how she had hidden and witnessed the murders of her entire family and all their traveling companions. They wore bandanas over their faces, she testified, but their clothing was white men's clothing. They spoke English to each other. One man gave orders, called Mr. B by the others. They were specifically looking for my father's medical supplies and the strongbox containing the group's money. She described her rescue by Swift River, her time among the Cherokee, and the gradual unraveling of Blackwood's scheme. As she spoke, she saw skepticism on some faces transform to shock, then anger, then determination. The men who killed my family were not Cherokee, she concluded firmly. They were white men, hired by Theodore Blackwood to commit murder and blame innocent people, all to further his land speculation schemes and hasten Cherokee removal. I lost everyone I loved to this man's greed. I ask that justice be done, not just for my family, but for the Cherokee who have been falsely accused. The impact was immediate and powerful. Even officials who had previously supported removal appeared shaken by the testimony and evidence. Journalists scribbled frantically, ensuring the story would spread far beyond New Echota. Representatives from neighboring tribes who had come to observe conferred in low, urgent voices, recognizing the implications for their own peoples. The most dramatic moment came when a federal judge present at the proceedings issued formal arrest warrants for several prominent citizens who had collaborated with Blackwood, men whose names had appeared in the confessions and documents presented. 2 were in the audience and were taken into custody immediately, their protestations of innocence drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. By day's end, resolutions had been passed condemning the false allegations against the Cherokee, demanding full investigation of similar incidents throughout the territory, and calling for a reconsideration of the removal timeline. "You've done more than I dared hope," Chief Ross told Emma privately after the proceedings concluded. "Your courage has given us valuable time and leverage in our ongoing negotiations." "But it won't stop the removal entirely," Emma said, still coming to terms with this bitter reality. "No," Ross acknowledged, "but it may allow for better terms, proper compensation, and most importantly, time to prepare rather than being driven from our homes at bayonet point. And for some, those who can remain hidden in the most remote mountains, it may mean not having to leave at all." That evening, as celebrations continued throughout New Echota, Emma found herself drawn to the quieter banks of the Ustanola River. The autumn moon reflected on the water's surface, creating a second sky of stars beneath the one above. She sat on a flat rock, hugging her knees to her chest, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, triumph and loss, hope and despair, belonging and displacement. Swift River found her there, approaching with his characteristic silent grace. He didn't speak, merely settled beside her on the rock, offering companionship without demands. After a long, comfortable silence, Emma spoke. "I don't know where I belong anymore. I'm not fully Cherokee, despite everything I've learned. But I don't feel like I fit in the white world either. I'm caught between." Swift River considered this. "Perhaps that is not a weakness, but a strength. Bridges must touch both shores to serve their purpose." "A bridge," Emma repeated thoughtfully. Grandmother Ayita mentioned something similar about the prophecy and bridging worlds. "Old stories speak of such things," Swift River acknowledged, "of those rare souls who can walk in multiple worlds, understanding each, translating between them. It is a difficult path, but an important one." "Is that what you do, as a scout for the army, but loyal to your people?" A faint smile touched his usually solemn features. "In my small way, perhaps, though I have not your gift for transformation." Emma thought about this, about all she had experienced since that terrible day at Thunder Ridge Pass. She had lost everything, yet found a new kind of belonging. had survived devastation only to discover unexpected purpose. "I want to go back to Whispering Falls Valley," she said suddenly, the decision crystallizing even as she spoke it. "To continue my training with Grandmother Aita, but I also want to help Chief Ross, to use my unique position to speak for the Cherokee to those who might listen." Swift River nodded approvingly. "The path reveals itself. Will the people accept me returning, now that the immediate danger has passed?" "Ibad, you have earned your place among us, Awenasa," he answered simply, "not through blood but through choice and action. The council has already discussed this. You will be welcomed as one of our own, a daughter of the Cherokee in spirit, if not in birth." Relief and gratitude washed over Emma. She had feared that once her testimony was given, once Blackwood was brought to justice, the Cherokee might expect her to return to white society. To know that she could remain with the people who had become her new family, while still working to bridge the divide between cultures, felt right in a way nothing else had since the massacre. The following week brought the formal trial of Theodore Blackwood and his accomplices in Parkerville. Emma testified again, this time before a territorial court packed with curious onlookers. Blackwood himself sat at the defendant's table, his former arrogance replaced by cold fury as he watched his carefully constructed world collapse around him. When given the opportunity to question Emma directly, Blackwood attempted to undermine her credibility, suggesting that she had been brainwashed by her time among the Cherokee. "Is it not true," he demanded, "that these savages have turned you against your own kind? That they've filled your impressionable young mind with their pagan beliefs and uncivilized practices?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "The Cherokee taught me compassion when I had lost everything. They showed me how to heal when I was broken. They risked their own safety to protect a stranger. If that is uncivilized, Mr. Blackwood, then perhaps civilization has lost its way." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even the judge seemed impressed by her composure and wisdom. "No further questions," Blackwood muttered, returning to his seat. The verdict, when it came 3 days later, was unequivocal. Guilty on all counts. Blackwood was sentenced to hang for multiple murders, conspiracy, fraud, and inciting racial violence. His main accomplices received lengthy prison terms. The young man who had cooperated with authorities received a reduced sentence in recognition of his testimony. As Blackwood was led from the courtroom, he locked eyes with Emma one last time. "This changes nothing," he spat bitterly. "The Indians will still be removed. Progress cannot be stopped, girl." "Perhaps not," Emma replied calmly, "but it can be guided toward justice rather than cruelty. That would be true progress, Mr. Blackwood." The journey back to Whispering Falls Valley felt different from their secretive departure. A triumphant return rather than a desperate mission. Word of their success had traveled ahead of them through Cherokee messenger networks. As they approached the hidden entrance to the valley, they found Grandmother Aita waiting there to welcome them personally. "The spirits spoke truly about you, Awenasa," the old medicine woman said, embracing Emma warmly. "You have walked the path of the bridge builder with courage." "I couldn't have done it without Swift River and Standing Bear," Emma replied honestly. "Without all of you." "Every journey requires companions," Aita agreed, "but each person must still take their own steps." As they entered the valley proper, Emma was astonished to find the entire community gathered to welcome them. Even those who had initially opposed her presence now raised their hands in greeting. Mary Birdsong rushed forward, embracing Emma with tearful excitement and peppering her with questions about New Ekota, the trial, and everything she had missed. That evening, a great council fire was lit in the center of the settlement. Food was shared, stories told, and honors bestowed. Standing Bear received a special eagle feather for his courage. Swift River was acclaimed for his wisdom in bringing Emma to the valley against conventional thinking. and Emma herself was formally adopted into the Cherokee Nation in a ceremony that moved her to tears. Grandmother Aita presided, presenting Emma with special moccasins decorated with symbols of both worlds, Cherokee patterns alongside motifs from white culture, representing her unique bridging position. From this day forward, Aita proclaimed, Awenasa is daughter to all Cherokee, not by blood but by spirit, which creates bonds even stronger. She has lost one family and found another. She has died to her old life and been reborn into a new one. Later, as the celebrations continued around the fire, Swift River joined Emma at the edge of the gathering. You seem troubled despite the honors, he observed. What weighs on your spirit? Emma hesitated, then confessed the thought that had been haunting her. Blackwood was right about one thing. The removal will still happen. Everything we've done hasn't changed that fundamental reality. Swift River nodded solemnly. The path ahead remains difficult, but consider what has changed. Cherokee accused of massacres have been exonerated. Those responsible have faced justice. The army now questions what they've been told about our people. And you, a bridge between worlds, stand ready to speak truth to power. It feels so small against such a great injustice. Even the mightiest river begins as a single raindrop, Swift River reminded her. Change often comes slowly building, through generations. Perhaps the full fruits of what we've started will be harvested by those who come after us. As winter settled over the blue smoke mountains, Emma's education in Cherokee ways deepened. Grandmother Aita accelerated her training in healing arts, recognizing both her aptitude and the urgent need to preserve such knowledge in the face of uncertain times. Emma proved an exceptional student, her Dr. Father's teachings providing a foundation that complemented traditional Cherokee medicine in unexpected ways. She learned to identify hundreds of medicinal plants, to prepare poultices and tinctures according to ancient recipes, to set bones and treat fevers, to address not just physical ailments but spiritual and emotional ones as well. You combine the best of both traditions, Aita observed, after Emma successfully treated a child's dangerous fever using a combination of Cherokee herbs and cooling techniques her father had taught her. Neither alone would have been as effective as the two working together. This integration of approaches became Emma's specialty. As word of her healing skills spread, people from throughout Cherokee territory sought her help, particularly for difficult cases that had resisted conventional treatments from either culture. When spring arrived, bringing wildflowers and new growth to the valley, a different sort of opportunity presented itself. A delegation arrived from New Echota, led by Chief Ross's nephew. They brought news and a request. The Cherokee National Council was establishing a special commission to document Cherokee life, history, and culture before removal, forced changes, and dispersal. They wanted Emma to participate. Your unique perspective would be invaluable, the young man explained. You see our ways with fresh eyes, noticing things we take for granted, and you can translate these observations into language that white authorities might understand. The project would require extensive travel throughout Cherokee territory, interviewing elders, recording stories and traditions, documenting medicinal practices, agricultural techniques, governance structures, everything that made the Cherokee Nation what it was. It would be an honor, Emma replied after considering the proposal, but I don't want to leave the valley permanently. The work would involve regular returns to Whispering Falls, the messenger assured her. In fact, starting here would be ideal, as these mountains hold some of our oldest traditions. Your knowledge of both worlds makes you uniquely qualified to preserve what might otherwise be lost. Emma accepted the commission, feeling both honored and burdened by the responsibility. For the next 2 years, she divided her time between Whispering Falls Valley and extensive travels throughout Cherokee territory. accompanied always by Swift River or Standing Bear for protection and cultural guidance. She documented everything from farming methods to spiritual practices, from traditional governance to family structures. She interviewed ancient medicine people who remembered the time before white contact, young Cherokee who had been educated in mission schools, mixed-blood families navigating both cultures, council leaders fighting the legal battles against removal, and ordinary people preparing for uncertain futures. As she worked, a profound realization grew in Emma. The Cherokee weren't a single monolithic culture, but contained multitudes, diverse opinions and adaptations to changing circumstances. Some embraced certain aspects of white civilization while rejecting others. Some held firmly to traditional ways while using new tools. All were struggling to maintain their identity against mounting pressure. "We are not living relics," one elder told her during an interview near the Tennessee border. "We are a living people. Change has always been part of our way, but change chosen by us, not forced upon us. That is the difference." Emma recorded these words carefully in her growing collection of journals, understanding their profound importance. The Cherokee weren't rejecting progress itself, but the assumption that progress required their erasure. On the second anniversary of her arrival at Whispering Falls Valley, a special ceremony was held to mark Emma's completed transition from outsider to full community member. Where her original adoption had been provisional, a response to emergency, this ceremony acknowledged the deliberate choice on both sides to make the relationship permanent. Standing Bear, who had once been her fiercest opponent, presented Emma with a ceremonial knife that had belonged to his grandfather. "To remember that even the sharpest divisions can be overcome," he told her as she accepted the gift with appropriate reverence. Mary Birdsong, now blossoming into womanhood alongside Emma, had woven a special sash depicting Emma's journey, from the butterfly that had saved her life to the council fire where she had testified against Blackwood. "So you never forget the path that brought you home," Mary explained as she helped Emma don the beautiful garment. Swift River's gift was more subtle. A small wooden box containing seeds from every medicinal plant in Grandmother Ayita's garden. "For wherever the wind may carry you," he said simply, "that healing may follow." The celebration lasted from sunset to sunrise, with dancing, feasting, storytelling, and prayers. As dawn broke over the eastern mountains, Grandmother Ayita led Emma to a sacred spring high above the valley, a place where, legend said, the boundary between worlds grew thin enough for messages to pass between them. "Close your eyes," the old medicine woman instructed. "Listen with more than ears." Emma obeyed, feeling the cool morning breeze against her face, hearing the gentle gurgle of the spring. But as she focused her attention, other sensations emerged, the impression of distant voices, familiar yet transformed, speaking words of love and pride. "Your first family approves," Ayita said quietly. "They see that you have found your way." Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks, not the desperate tears of grief that had marked her early months in the valley, but gentle tears of acceptance and gratitude. "They know I haven't forgotten them," she whispered. "They know you honor them." "Through how you live," Ayita confirmed. "Now open your hands." Emma extended her palms. Ayita placed something small, smooth and cool in them, a stone pendant carved with intertwining symbols from both Cherokee and white spiritual traditions. "The final lesson," Ayita said. "You are not half of each world, but fully of both. This is the true meaning of bridge, not divided loyalty, but expanded belonging." The pendant seemed to pulse with energy against Emma's skin as she placed it around her neck alongside her family locket. Two tangible connections to her dual heritage, neither diminishing the other. When summer came, bringing heat and ripening, berries to the valley, The documentation project led Emma to the eastern boundaries of Cherokee territory. She and Swift River spent weeks recording the stories of communities there who had already been feeling the pressure of encroaching settlers for generations. They were returning through a remote mountain pass when Swift River suddenly raised his hand for silence, his body language instantly alert. Emma had learned to trust his instincts without question. She froze in place, listening intently. At first, she heard nothing beyond the natural sounds of the forest. Then, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot, followed by shouting in the distance. Swift River motioned Emma to follow as he moved silently through the underbrush toward a vantage point overlooking the commotion. Below, they saw a disturbing scene. A small group of Cherokee families traveling with loaded pack horses had been intercepted by armed white men. The confrontation appeared to be escalating rapidly. "State militia," Swift River whispered, recognizing their informal uniforms, enforcing Georgia's new laws, claiming Cherokee land. "We have to help them," Emma said instantly. Swift River shook his head. "Too many guns. We would only add to the casualties." Emma understood his caution, but something inside her rebelled against simply watching another injustice unfold. In that moment, she made a split-second decision that would change everything. "I'm going down there," she said firmly. "They won't." "Shoot a white girl. I can create a distraction, give those families a chance to escape." Before Swift River could stop her, Emma was scrambling down the slope, adjusting her clothing to emphasize her white appearance rather than her Cherokee attire. She burst into the clearing with deliberate noise, startling both groups. "Oh, thank heavens!" she cried in her best distressed young lady voice. "I've been lost for hours. Please, can someone help me?" The militiamen turned toward her in surprise, momentarily confused by her sudden appearance. The Cherokee families, recognizing an opportunity, began slowly backing away toward the forest edge. "Miss, this is dangerous territory," the militia leader said, approaching Emma with suspicion. "What are you doing out here alone?" Emma spun a rapid tale of becoming separated from a hunting party, embellishing with details designed to keep her attention fixed on her. As she talked, she positioned herself between the militia and the Cherokee families, watching from the corner of her eye as they slipped one by one into the protective cover of the forest. The militia leader, however, wasn't entirely fooled. He glanced back, noticing the diminishing number of Cherokee. "Hold it right there!" he shouted, raising his rifle toward the retreating families. In that critical moment, Emma made a choice that defined her dual identity more clearly than any ceremony could. She deliberately stepped into the militia leader's line of fire. "These people have done nothing wrong," she declared, abandoning her helpless girl pretense. "They're traveling peacefully through their own ancestral lands. Get out of the way." "Girl," the leader growled, "these Indians are in violation of Georgia law." "I am Emma Whitfield," she replied, standing her ground. "Survivor of the Thunder Ridge Pass Massacre. The same massacre your kind tried to blame on the Cherokee. Perhaps you've heard my testimony? How white men like you murdered my family and tried to start a war based on lies." The name registered. The Thunder Ridge case had become famous throughout the territory. The militiamen exchanged uncertain glances, clearly recognizing they were facing a witness whose testimony had already sent men to the gallows. Their hesitation was all Swift River needed. From his concealed position, he gave a signal, a perfect imitation of a hawk's cry. Suddenly, Cherokee warriors materialized from the surrounding forest, arrows nocked and ready. They had been traveling behind the families as protection, anticipating precisely this kind of confrontation. The militia, now outnumbered and outflanked, lowered their weapons reluctantly. "This isn't over," the leader warned as he backed away. "The removal is coming. No amount of resistance will stop it." "Perhaps not," Emma agreed calmly. "But history will remember who stood for justice and Who for tyranny? Which side will you be remembered for? The question hung in the air as the militia retreated, leaving Emma standing symbolically between the two groups, exactly where she had chosen to place herself in more ways than one. That night, camped with the grateful Cherokee families they had helped, Swift River studied Emma across the fire. "You could have been killed today," he said finally. "So could they," Emma replied simply. "I made a choice." "Yes," he agreed thoughtfully, "the choice of the bridge builder. Not to observe from safety, but to stand in the dangerous middle ground where worlds collide." The incident on the mountain pass marked a turning point in Emma's relationship with the broader Cherokee community. Word spread rapidly through tribal networks of how the white Cherokee girl had risked her life to protect others. Families who had been hesitant to share their stories with her now sought her out. Doors previously closed opened wide. More significantly, her actions drew attention from white authorities and sympathetic settlers. Newspapers that had initially portrayed her as a curiosity, the wild white child living among savages, now began describing her as a cultural ambassador with unique insights. Her written accounts of Cherokee life found their way to influential readers in Washington, Philadelphia, and Boston. Late that autumn, Emma received an unexpected invitation. Chief John Ross requested her presence at critical negotiations with federal representatives regarding the implementation of the Removal Act. Her unique position, legally white but culturally Cherokee, allowed her to attend sessions where no full-blood Cherokee would have been permitted. "I'm not a politician," Emma protested when the invitation arrived. "What difference can I possibly make?" "You are living proof that our worlds can come together with respect rather than destruction," Swift River pointed out. "That itself is powerful testimony." The negotiations were held in Nashville, requiring Emma to leave the mountains and enter white society more fully than she had since the massacre. Swift River accompanied her as far as the city limits, but could not go further, without risking arrest under laws restricting Cherokee movement. "Remember who you are," he told her before they parted. "All of who you are." Emma nodded, touching the two pendants at her throat, her family locket and Ayita's stone carving. "I'll carry both worlds with me." The 2 weeks of negotiations tested Emma in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was viewed with suspicion by both sides, too Cherokee for many whites, too white for some Cherokee representatives. The federal negotiators frequently spoke as if she weren't present, making callous remarks about savages and progress that ignited her temper. Yet she learned to channel that anger productively, interjecting personal stories that humanized the abstract policies under discussion. When an official casually dismissed concerns about separating Cherokee from their ancestral burial grounds, Emma described standing at her own family's hasty graves at Thunder Ridge Pass, asking how he would feel if those he loved were left behind in unmarked earth. The man had no answer. Though the broad strokes of removal could not be prevented, Emma's presence influenced significant details of the implementation. Routes were adjusted to avoid the most dangerous terrain. Timeframes were extended to allow proper preparation. Provisions for the elderly and children were increased, and most importantly, recognition was given to those who might remain hidden in the most remote mountains, a tacit acknowledgement that some Cherokee would continue their traditional life. "In the East, if secretly, you've done more good than you know," Chief Ross told her as the negotiations concluded. "Lives will be saved because of the changes you've helped secure." Emma felt the weight of his words, both the achievement and its limitations. "It's still wrong," she said quietly. "All of it." "Yes," Ross agreed simply. "But in this imperfect world, reducing harm is sometimes the most justice we can achieve in a single lifetime. Future generations must continue the work." Returning to the Blue Smoke Mountains after those weeks in Nashville felt like breathing freely after near suffocation. Swift River met her at their arranged location, immediately noticing the changes in her. Not just the white woman's clothing she had worn for the negotiations, but a new gravity in her expression, a deeper understanding of the forces arrayed against the Cherokee. "It was worse than I imagined," she admitted, as they made their way back toward Whispering Falls. "The removal will begin next spring. Some officials speak of it as if they're discussing moving cattle, not people with homes and histories." Swift River nodded grimly. "We have suspected as much. Preparations are already underway." Those preparations consumed the valley throughout the winter. Food was preserved, supplies gathered, maps carefully drawn, showing hidden routes through the mountains where soldiers would never find them. Grandmother Aita worked tirelessly, training younger healers, Emma among them, to ensure medical knowledge would survive whatever hardships lay ahead. "The greatest danger is not the journey itself," the old medicine woman explained, "but the breaking of spirit that comes from losing connection to sacred places, ceremonies, and traditions. Our challenge will be to maintain who we are, even as everything around us changes." As spring approached, bringing with it the imminent threat of forced removal, Emma faced her own decision. News had reached her that distant relatives had been located in St. Louis, an aunt and uncle who had written expressing willingness to take her in, to restore her to civilized life, as they phrased it. The choice before her was stark: return to white society with its relative comfort and safety, or remain with the Cherokee as they faced their greatest trial, a people divided between forced removal and precarious hiding. On the night before, she needed to send her response. Emma climbed to the sacred spring where Grandmother Aita had once helped her hear her first family's blessing. The stars overhead seemed unusually bright, their light reflecting in the still waters of the pool. "Show me the path," she whispered to the night. No dramatic vision came, no voices from beyond. Instead, Emma felt a gradual clarity settling over her, a bone-deep certainty about where she belonged and what she must do. The next morning, she sought out Swift River, finding him by the river where they had first entered the valley years ago. "I've decided," she told him without preamble. He waited, his expression revealing nothing of his own hopes or expectations. "I'm staying," Emma said firmly. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I choose to be, with the people who became my family when I had none, facing whatever comes together." Swift River's normally stoic features softened with something like relief. "The path reveals itself," he murmured, echoing words he had spoken to her long ago. "Not reveals itself," Emma corrected gently. "The path is made by walking, by choosing each step, even when the way ahead is shrouded in mist." Together, they stood at the river's edge, watching the water flow past, always moving, always changing, yet somehow eternally the same, like the Cherokee themselves, like Emma, who had journeyed from Emma Whitfield to Awenasa and emerged as both, simultaneously. The butterfly that had led her away from the wagons that fateful day had been no random accident, she now believed. It had been a guide, leading her to exactly where she needed to be, to the place and people who would not only save her life, but give it new meaning and purpose. In the coming years, as the full tragedy of Cherokee removal unfolded, Emma would serve as both witness and participant, documenting the horror of what became known as the Trail of Tears, while working to preserve the heritage of those who remained hidden in the mountains. She would bridge worlds not just in her own identity, but in practical action, sometimes using her white appearance to secure supplies or information that saved lives, other times drawing on her Cherokee training to heal both body and spirit. She would eventually marry a young Cherokee man who shared her vision of cultural preservation, raising children who carried forward the legacy of both their heritages. Those children would grow up hearing the story of a butterfly's wings changing, the course of history, of a massacre that led not just to justice, but to a new kind of belonging. And decades later, long after Emma's hair had turned silver like grandmother Aita's, she would welcome a journalist from the eastern cities to Whispering Falls Valley. By then, one of the few places where traditional Cherokee life continued, unbroken despite all efforts to erase it. "How did you do it?" the young man would ask, amazed by the thriving community hidden from the world's eyes for so long. "How did you hold on when everything was against you?" Emma would smile, touching the two pendants she still wore. The silver locket now tarnished with age, the stone carving smooth from decades of handling. "By remembering that bridges don't just connect separate shores," she would answer. "They create new ground where none existed before." The journalist would record these words, not fully understanding their meaning until much later, when his articles about the hidden Cherokee helped spark a national re-examination of Indian policy. By then, Emma would be gone, buried beside Swift River on a sunny hillside overlooking the valley that had become her true home. But her legacy would live on, in the community she helped preserve, in the healing traditions she documented and practiced, in the bridge she built between worlds that too often saw each other only through the lens of fear. And on her grave marker, carved according to her specific instructions, visitors would find not only her two names, Emma Whitfield and Awenesa, but also a simple image, a butterfly with outstretched wings, caught in the eternal moment of transformation, the perfect symbol for a life spent turning tragedy into purpose, division into connection, and hatred into understanding. For Emma had discovered what few ever truly learn, that the boundaries between worlds exist primarily in our minds, that the human heart recognizes kindred spirits regardless of culture or color, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to stand in the dangerous middle ground and declare it sacred. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.